Let's start as usual, writing the date. So what day is today? Hoy es sábado. Okay. Then we can put a comma here if we want. Then it's 19 de octubre de 2024. Okay. Hoy es sábado, 19 de octubre de 2024. And then the short way in Spanish, 19/10/2024 in Spanish, or in English, 10/19/2024. Okay, let's start. Do you have any question about Spanish, something that you want to ask me? Did you read, do you have time to read the files about the verb ser and estar? No, no questions? Okay. So I'm going to start by explaining something related to what I said last time. Remember that, for example, if I have this kind of sentence, let's say that first in English. I bought this book. And then in Spanish, we can say yo. And if you want, you can omit yo. So you can put it in brackets for you to remember that this is possible in Spanish to omit yo, that is I. Yo compré. And then remember that the reason for omitting yo is because compré is a conjugation that is only for the first person, I. Instead of that, in English, you cannot omit I, because but can be used for different, from the what we call the 6 persons in the conjugation. You can use but for all of them. I bought, you bought, he bought, we bought, you all bought, and they bought. So it's not correct to omit I, because we don't know what's the subject. We don't know if it is I bought this book, or he bought this book, or we bought this book. But in Spanish, it's possible to omit yo, because compré is exclusive for yo. Yo compré este libro. And then remember that it's possible to omit the noun, both in English and Spanish. And then you can say, I bought it, where it is replacing this book. And then in Spanish, you can say yo. And then the it that is after the verb in English, it goes before the verb in Spanish. Yo lo compré. So this lo represents the book, it, and this lo is a masculine pronoun in Spanish. It's a masculine direct object pronoun for the third person, because libro is masculine and singular. It's a noun that is masculine and singular in Spanish. And then we are replacing libro with lo, that is also masculine and singular, representing the third person singular when it's a conjugation. But in this case, this it is not a subject pronoun. The subject pronoun is I, and it is an object pronoun. So yo is the subject pronoun in Spanish, and lo is an object pronoun representing este libro. Okay, so this is what we mentioned last time. Now let's see when it's possible to say something different, not placing lo necessarily before the verb. Okay, it could be in another position. Okay, so let's right now. Well, let's say that these sentences represent a statement. Yes. And now let's see what happens if we try to say a command in Spanish and then in English. Okay, so in Spanish, we can say, well, first in English, let's suppose that you say, buy this book as a command, and then if you want to say that, replacing the noun with a pronoun, you can say buy it. Okay. For the name command, we can say in Spanish, orden or mandato. Any of these two nouns are possible. So orden, there's an order, and mandato for mandate, it represents the word command in Spanish. Orden is feminine, es una orden, and mandato is masculine, el orden. So el mandato, un mandato, and then la orden. But let's remember that we have the masculine, el orden, and the feminine, la orden. And they have different meaning. In this case, when it's a command, this is feminine. So el orden is something related with the verb to organize. So when we have the verb ordenar, that means to organize, then the noun is el orden. So el orden, this looks organized. It's not a mess, it's not a disorder. And then el orden is masculine when it's related with the verb ordenar, that means to organize. But when the verb ordenar means to command, then the noun that we use is feminine, la orden, the command. Okay. And of course, you can use both in a sentence like, the mom said her child the command for organizing his room, for example, and then you can say la madre ordenó al niño. So the mother in the past tense commanded her son ordenar su cuarto, to organize his room. So it's possible, not very frequent, but if we want, we can use both in the same sentence. Okay, but now we are talking about commands. La orden or el mandato. In English, buy this book. Or in the short way, replacing book with a pronoun, buy it. Okay. So you can say in Spanish, compra este libro. This is a command. So the conjugation compra is a conjugation for the second person you in the colloquial way. So it's related to tú. We don't say tú in the same way that we don't say in English buy you this book. It's just buy this book. Compra este libro. But this compra is related to the second person tú. If we want to say that in a formal way, we can say compre, a different conjugation, este libro. And then compre is related with the formal you, usted. Okay, so there are two ways to say that. The command is what you say directly to another person. If this person, if you can treat this person in an informal way, you can say compra este libro. If you want to talk to this person in a formal way, because he's a stranger, or because you want to show some kind of respect, you can say compre este libro, compre este libro. Okay, so for the compre este libro, when we say buy it, we say in Spanish, cómpralo. Cómpralo. So the command, in this case, well, notice first that the stress tone goes on the O, compra, and when we say cómpralo, it's still on the O. But now, the syllable com, it's the antepenultimate syllable. Lo is the last syllable, pra is the penultimate syllable, and com is the antepenultimate syllable. Because of that, it's necessary to write an accent mark, a tilde, on top of the O. So on the O, because remember, every word in Spanish with the stress tone on the antepenultimate syllable, all of them need an accent mark on the vowel of that syllable, in this case, the O, cómpralo. Okay, now what we can notice here is that in the statement, we wrote lo before the verb, but in the command, we write lo as in English, after the verb. Buy it is after buy, and lo is after compra. But another thing is that the lo is attached to the command, cómpralo. So in English, it's separate. Buy it. In Spanish, it's one word because we attach the pronoun to the verb when it's after, cómpralo. When it's before, it's separate. Yo lo compré in a statement. And when it's a command, it goes attached to the verb at the end of the verb. Cómpralo. Okay, so that's the first case that I wanted to show you. The difference between a command and a statement when we are talking about object pronouns. Now I'm gonna show you a second case. Okay, so now the case that another case that I wanted to show you is when we have a statement, but we have more than one verb in the sentence. Like, for example, let's say in English, I want to buy this book. So in this case, you have in the same sentence two verbs, one and two, the verb to want and the verb to buy. In Spanish, you can say Again, it's possible to omit yo because of the conjugation of yo is exclusive for yo. Yo quiero, in this case, is about the conjugated verb is the verb to want. Yo quiero. To buy is not conjugated, it's in the infinitive. So it's a plain verb. Yo quiero comprar, and then this book. I put it a little bit here. Yo quiero comprar libro. Okay, that's the same sentence in Spanish and in English. And many times, as you can see, the word order is the same in both languages, in English and in Spanish. So first I, first yo, then want, then quiero, then to buy, then comprar, then this, then then book, and lastly, libro. So not always, but many times you can see that the word order in English is exactly the same word order in Spanish. That's good because it makes things easier. Okay, now let's replace this book as in the previous one, that we replace this book with it in the command and also in the statement. I bought this book, I bought it. Let's replace this book with the pronoun. I want to buy it. Okay. And then you're going to see that in Spanish, we have two options. We have two alternatives to say I want to buy it in Spanish. Let's say that one is A, and we can say yo lo quiero comprar. Okay, so in this case, A, yo lo quiero comprar, is following the same rule as when we have a sentence with one verb. When we said I bought this book, only one verb, the verb to buy in the past tense, I bought this book. We place lo before the conjugated verb. That in this case was only one verb. But in this case, we have two. Yo quiero comprar este libro. We place este libro as it before the conjugated verb. Yo lo quiero comprar. But it's also possible, the second option is yo quiero comprarlo. Okay, so when you have two or more than two, it's not only for two verbs. You can have a sentence with 3 or 4 verbs, not very common, but it's possible to have 3 verbs or 4 verbs in the same sentence. You can place the pronoun, in this case, it or lo in Spanish, because libro is masculine and singular. You can place that before the conjugated verb or attach to the last verb. So if it goes at the end, it is attached to this verb. Or if it is before, it's separate and it goes before the conjugated verb. Okay, so this is something that is new for you but it's very common for native speakers to say both ways. So it's indifferent. You can say yo lo quiero comprar or yo quiero comprarlo. For many students, they prefer to say yo quiero comprarlo because it sounds closer to the English way, where it goes after to buy it. Then, well, I'm going to say yo quiero comprarlo because it sounds more similar to English. But you can say both ways. There's not anyone that is better or more important than the other. You can say anyway, yo lo quiero comprar o yo quiero comprarlo. Let's try to say something using three verbs, even if it's not very common. Let's say, I'm gonna write that even if we prefer to use the verb to like in English, but I want to write this way because it's exactly like in Spanish. I would want to be able to buy it. I'm not saying yes, this book, because you know that we're talking about the book. So in this case, you have the verb to want. So in this would want, the verb is to want. In to be able, the verb is to be. And then the verb to buy. You have three verbs here. Okay, let's try to say that in Spanish. So you can see that's not very common, but it's possible. You say, I would want to be able to buy it. Then you can say in Spanish, yo, and then let's try to place it before the conjugated verb. Yo lo quisiera. So let's use quisiera for would want. Literally, would want is querría as a conditional tense, but many times we prefer to say quisiera because it's easier to pronounce quisiera than querría with this double R that it's made you to it's forcing you to say that in a very strong way, querría, and then that's why we prefer to say quisiera. Okay, so it's literally querría, would want, but we try to avoid, even native speakers try to avoid to say querría, because it's hard to pronounce querría. So we replace querría with quisiera. That is imperfect subjunctive, but it has the same meaning in this case. And then the it goes before the verb, yo lo quisiera. For to be able, we can use the verb poder in Spanish. So the verb poder is to be able, but also can be the auxiliary verbs can or may in English. But when you use poder as the main verb in a sentence, we conjugate poder. In English, we don't conjugate can because they are auxiliary verbs. We say I can go, you can go, he can go. So we don't conjugate can, but we conjugate poder. So yo puedo ir, I can go. Tú puedes ir, you can go. Él puede ir, he can go. So the auxiliary verbs in Spanish are when they are part of the main verb of the sentence, we conjugate them poder, can or may. But in this case, we are not going to say can. So we don't say I would put can. I would say I would want to be able to buy it. Yo lo quisiera poder, and then to buy, comprar. Okay, so this is the first option. As in the previous one, when you have two verbs, I want to buy this book, two verbs, the verb to want and the verb to buy, then you can say yo lo quiero comprar. You can place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb. And then it's also possible to place the object pronoun attached to the last verb that in this case is comprar. Yo quiero comprarlo. Okay. When you have 3 or 4 or 5, well, it's very complicated to say a sentence with 5 verbs. In this case, 3 verbs, it's the same rule. You can place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb, that is, in this case, quisiera, conjugated. Poder is not conjugated. Poder is in the infinitive, to be able. And comprar is not conjugated, it's also in the infinitive, to buy, comprar. Yo lo quisiera poder comprar, or placing the object pronoun at the end. Yo quisiera poder comprarlo. And both ways, let's say this is A and this is B, both ways are very common in Spanish. There's no any of them that is more important or more common than the other. You can say any of them. As I told you, many English speakers prefer to use the one with the object pronoun at the end because it looks similar to English, where it is at the end. I would want to be able to buy it. It is at the end. Yo quisiera poder comprarlo. Lo is at the end. With the big difference that in to buy it is not connected with to buy. It's separate. To buy it. In Spanish, lo is attached to comprar. Comprarlo is one word. It's not comprarlo, but comprarlo. One word. Okay? So you can say both ways. Yo lo quisiera poder comprar. Yo quisiera poder comprarlo. Okay, I think that this is what was necessary to explain for you to have the whole scene, the whole view about where you can place object pronouns. So if you have only one verb, the only option is before the conjugated verb in a statement. Yo lo compré. I bought it. If you have a command, the only option is to place the object pronoun attached to the command, the verb that is, in this case, conjugated as a command. Compra este libro, buy this book, buy it. Cómpralo. It goes attached to the verb. It's not possible to place that before the verb. Cómpralo. So notice that many times, like this, when you go from a sentence with a noun to a sentence with a pronoun, then the word is esdrújula, meaning that the stress tone now is on the third syllable, counting from right to left, first syllable, second syllable, third syllable, or if you prefer, the ante penultimate syllable. Lo, last syllable, para, penultimate syllable, com, ante penultimate syllable. So the stress tone goes in the same place, on the O after the C. Compra, and here is the same O. Cómpralo. But now it's in the third position, o ante penultimate position, cómpralo. Okay, and well, and then remember, we have the verb ordenar, meaning to organize. In that case, the word orden is it's masculine, el orden. So when something is organized. And when the verb ordenar means to command, then the noun orden is feminine, la orden, the command. So el orden is like the organization. Everything is tiny. Everything is not depending. It's not a mess. It's clean. Everything is in the right position. El orden. But if it's a command, you need to go upstairs and send my message to the manager upstairs. La orden, the command, when you say a command, okay? And, well, compre este libro is about tú. Compre este libro is about usted. Compre este libro is an informal command. Compre este libro is a formal command because it's about usted. And when you have more than two verbs in a sentence, well, it could be two or more than two, you have two options. You can place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb or attached to the last verb. And this is an example with two verbs. I want to buy it. Yo lo quiero comprar. Yo quiero comprarlo. And this is an example with three verbs. I would want to be able to buy it. Remember that that's the verb poder, that is in English the auxiliary verbs, can or may. But the difference is that we don't conjugate auxiliary verbs in English, but we conjugate auxiliary verbs in Spanish. So it's, for example, if I want to say, I may, you may, he, so I may do it, you may do it, he might do it, he may do it, and in Spanish it's conjugated. Yo puedo hacerlo, tú puedes hacerlo, él puede hacerlo. So in this case, to be able is poder. Yo lo quisiera poder, so it goes before the conjugated verb, o yo quisiera poder comprarlo attached to the last verb. So if you have 5 verbs in a sentence, you only have 2 options. Before the conjugated verb, or attached to the last one. If you have 1 or 2 or 3 verbs in the middle, you don't need to touch them. They are going to stay in the middle, and there is still the same thing. The object pronoun goes before the conjugated verb or attached to the last one. Never attached to those in the middle, and never before those in the middle. Okay? Any question? Yeah, this is something that is a little bit advanced, but it's so common that if you understand this right now, you are ready in the future when you hear or you're listening to somebody saying the object pronoun before or after, you can say, yes, yeah, that I learned that I know that it's okay to say both ways. There are some cases when it's not possible to use both ways. Is when we use verbs similar to the verb gustar. So verbs like gustar. Okay, for example, if we want to say me gusta leer esa revista. Me gusta leer esa revista. I like. Well, you can say I like reading or I like to read, depending if it's the first time or it's a habit. I like to read that magazine. Or if it's something that you usually do, I like reading that magazine. But again, this is a case where we have 2 verbs. The verb gustar is to like, and the verb leer, that's the verb to read. But in this case, let's replace esa revista with it. And the only option in Spanish is me gusta leerla. It's not possible to place revista is feminine, so it's a feminine it. That's why this in this case is la, not lo, because book is masculine, but revista is feminine, magazine is feminine in Spanish. Me gusta leerla, but it's not possible to say me la gusta leer. No, never, never. So when you use verbs similar to the verb gustar, it's not possible to have both positions before and after. The only way is after. Me gusta leerla. We never say me la gusta leer. Why not? Because verbs like gustar, you know, if that in these verbs are peculiar if we compare them with English. Remember that the verb gustar is similar to the verb to please. For example, I like, let's say, this company. And we say in Spanish, me gusta esta compañía. The company, compañía. But you notice that in English we're saying I, but in Spanish we are not saying I. We are not saying yo. We are saying me. And me is not I. Me is me. So in Spanish we're using me, the English me, but in Spanish is me and not I, that is yo. Why? Because the verb gustar works in a different way. So if I say the sentence in English, like, I like this company, but I can transform this sentence in this company pleases me. That's not the common way, but it's possible to say this company pleases me. Then you can see that this me in English is similar to the me in Spanish. So this company pleases me in literally in Spanish is esta compañía me gusta. Okay. And then you can see that again, when we have only one verb, we need to place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb. The conjugated verb is gusta. Esta compañía me gusta. This company pleases me. Esta compañía me gusta. But if we want, we have like two blocks here. Me gusta and esta compañía. Yeah. When we say in English, this company pleases me, notice the pleases is an S. Why? Because the subject is not me. The subject is this company. It's a third person subject. Well, it's an object, but it's in grammar, it's the third person. It pleases me. That's why this company is the subject. When you say I like this company, the subject is I, and then like is conjugated according to the subject. I like. It's not likes, because it's not he likes, it's I like. But when you say this company pleases me, the verb is conjugated in the third person because of this company. And it's the same in Spanish. Gusta is conjugated in the third person because the subject is esta compañía, as it is in English. this company, esta compañía, me gusta, pleases me. So gusta is in the same conjugation as pleases. Third person singular. Gusta is a conjugation in the third person. The third person singular because esta compañía is the subject. So that's a big difference because in English, when you say I like this company, the subject is I. But when you say this company pleases me, the subject is this company. And when you say me gusta esta compañía in Spanish, the subject is this company because it doesn't matter if you say you have two blocks, esta compañía me gusta, and you can change, let's say that this is block, let's say that this is block B and this is block A, but you can change the order. So you can say A plus B or B plus A, and the meaning is not changing. Me gusta esta compañía. You change the order of these two blocks. And then you get what we have here. Me gusta esta compañía. Me gusta esta compañía. But then gusta is conjugated in the third person because this company is the subject. So this is tricky because the subject in this kind of sentence goes at the end. Well, it could be at the beginning or at the end, but the more common way is, the most common is at the end. Me gusta esta compañía. Esta compañía is still the subject, and gusta is conjugated because always a verb is conjugated according to the subject. Gusta is conjugated according to esta compañía and not according to me. That is an object pronoun. This company pleases me. Esta compañía me gusta. You change the order, but you still have the same meaning. Me gusta esta compañía. When you have these kind of sentences, you are not able to place the object pronoun in two ways. Only one. Me gusta leer esa revista. I like to read that magazine. Me gusta leerla. You cannot say in Spanish, me la gusta leer. So me gusta leerla, it's equivalent to say it, that is the magazine, it pleases me to read it. And then you can notice that that's a very strange way because you have leerla, that is this it, the magazine. And then you have an impersonal it here, that is the situation. It pleases me what to read that magazine. And then this is the only way to say in Spanish, me gusta leerla. Never me la gusta leer. So when you see sentences when we don't use I, but me, these are sentences when we have verbs similar to the verb gustar. For example, the verb encantar, that when it's a straight verb, it is the verb to charm as a straight verb. Straight in the sense that what is the subject in English is also the subject in Spanish. But when it's like the verb gustar, encantar is equivalent to the verb to love. And this is what we call a reverse verb. Why reverb? Why reverse? Because what is the subject in English is an object in Spanish. And the subject in Spanish is an object in English. Like here. Esa revista is the object in English. I like to read that magazine. But esa revista is that magazine is the subject, is the object in English, but esa revista is the subject in Spanish. So it's that esa revista is the subject in the sentence. Me gusta leer esa revista. That magazine is the one that is pleasing me. That's the subject. And me in Spanish, is just the object. Let's see an example with encantar, and then we can go to another topic. After saying that, if you don't have questions. So let's summarize. If you have only one verb in Spanish in a sentence, like I bought this book, the only option that you have is to place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb. If you don't replace the noun with an object pronoun and you keep this book, it's like in English. I bought this book. This book goes after bought, and then este libro goes after compré. Same word order as in English. But if you replace this book with it, then the only option with only one verb is to place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb in a statement. If you have a command, the only option that you have is to place the object pronoun after the verb and attach. So buy this book, buy it. You replace this book with it. In Spanish, if you don't replace this book, it's like in English. Buy, compra, this, este, book, libro. Same word order. Compra este libro. But if you replace buy with it, the object pronoun still goes at the end, but attached to the verb. Cómpralo, buy it. Okay? Or compre este libro if it is a formal command. When you have more than one verb in the sentence, in this case, two verbs, to want and to buy, I want to buy this book, you can say that in two ways. Without replacing this book is the same as in English. Yo want, quiero, to buy, comprar, este book, libro, same word order. And when you replace this book with it, you have two options. Before the conjugated verb, yo lo quiero comprar, or attached to the last verb, comprarlo. Okay. And it's the same rule if you have more than two verbs. In this example, we have three verbs. I would want to be able to buy it. Okay, it's the same. You can place the it before the conjugated verb. Yo lo quisiera poder comprar, or attach to the last verb. Yo quisiera poder comprarlo. And you don't touch the verb in the middle. Poder. You don't touch poder. Poder is the same in both sentences, in the middle of the sentence, in the middle of the two verbs that represent the conjugated verb, quisiera, or the verb at the end, comprar. But if you have a verb like gustar, you cannot do that. You can say, me gusta leer esa revista, and then the only option when you replace esa revista with it is me gusta leerla at the end, attached to the last verb, but you cannot say me la gusta leer, okay? And then, well, let's see a sentence using another verb that is not gustar, but this verb can work as the verb gustar in the sense that is a reverse verb. So let's see encantar as a straight verb, to charm, and as to love. For example, the piper charmed the children. Piper in the sense, that a person playing the flute, as in the story. Flute in Spanish is flauta. The instrument flauta, the flute. The piper charmed the children. We say in Spanish, el flautista. Notice that in Spanish we have many words ending in ista, representing a profession or an activity, similar to English in some cases, like artist, artista, dentist, dentista, and flautista, a person who plays the flute. El flautista encantó, the verb to charm, a los niños. Okay, here the verb encantar is used as a stray verb. It's similar to English. The piper charmed the children. And then you can say el flautista. And then let's replace los niños, the children, can be replaced with them. The piper charmed them. And in Spanish, los niños can be replaced with los. That is the plural. El flautista los encantó. Okay, so it's only one verb, and then we place los before the conjugated verb. We have here only one verb, los encantó. The a, because in Spanish we say the piper charmed to the children. When you replace that, you don't need to say a, it's just lo. El flautista los encantó. You need the a when it's people, but when you replace the noun with a pronoun, you don't need the a, the preposition to, when you use the pronoun. El flautista los encantó. The piper charmed them. Okay, that's a stray verb. But if I use the verb encantar as a verb similar to the verb gustar, we can say, for example, me encanta esa película. And it is in English, I love that movie. Me encanta esa película. I love that movie. So encantar is used in Spanish representing to love, usually for objects, because we also have the verb amar, that is really the verb to love. In English, we can use the verb to love for both. Like, for example, somebody can say, yo amo a mis padres. That is, I love my parents. And the verb amar is a stray verb. So, yo is the subject. Yo amo mis padres. I love my parents. But here you can see that it's not yo, it's me. So it is used as the verb gustar. Me encanta esa película. I love that movie. And then it's not possible to say me la encanta. Never. we cannot say that. It's just me encanta esa película. And also, it's possible to say I love it. But in Spanish, it's not possible to replace that with lo or la. You can say, if you want to use a pronoun, me encanta ella. That is a pronoun, but it's literally I like her. Why her? Because película is a feminine noun in Spanish. And then you can say, for it, you need to use a feminine it in Spanish, but in this case, you need to use ella. You cannot say me encanta la, no, because when we have only one verb, it's not possible to place la after the verb. It has to be before. But in this case, it's not possible to place la before because this is a sentence using a verb similar to the verb gustar when it sounds horrible because it's a reverse verb to place la before the verb. So the only option is me encanta ella when ella represents a feminine it, that in this case is that movie, esa película. Me encanta ella, me la encanta. Me la encanta, never. So remember, okay. Okay, here. These words, straight verb and reverse verb, is something that you are not going to find in grammar books. Why? Because this is a comparison that only works between English and Spanish. The verb gustar and encantar are not considered reverse verbs in Spanish. It's a verb, it's a normal verb, but it's a verb where the subject, it's in this case that magazine, but in Spanish it's okay. Okay, that's the subject. So that magazine pleases me. It's the way we say in Spanish. It's not, but when you compare English and Spanish, is when you see that what is a subject in English, that is I, is an object in Spanish, that is me. And what is the object in English, that magazine, is the subject in Spanish, esa revista. So that's why this word or this phrase, reverse verb and straight verb, you are not going to find this in English grammar books or in Spanish grammar books. Only when you compare English and Spanish is when you can say, oh, is encantar a reverse verb? Well, it depends. If you use encantar as the verb to love, it is a reverse verb. If you use encantar as the verb to charm, it is a straight verb. It is just normal in the sense that what is a subject in English is a subject in Spanish. What is an object in English is an object in Spanish as a straight verb. As in the sentence, the piper charmed the children. The piper is the subject, that is third person singular. He charmed the children. And then you can see that in Spanish, encantó, past tense, is a conjugation that is matching the subject. It's a conjugation for the third person singular. And the piper, el flautista, is third person singular. And the children is plural, is them, but the children are not the subject, the children are the object. The children, los niños, then, el flautista los encantó. But when you go to the sender, I love that movie, I is the subject in English, that movie is the object, but in Spanish, that movie, esa película, is the subject and me is the object. That's why encanta is conjugated for that movie, third person singular. Esa película me encanta. That movie. If you, I love that movie, but in if you want to say another verb like to please, that we use to please with the verb gustar, you can use the verb to delight, for example, if you want to see that. Me encanta esa película. That movie delights me. And then you can see the me in Spanish and the me in English. That movie delights me. Me encanta esa película as a reverse verb. So what I want to say to finish this topic is that encantar represents a stronger feeling than gustar. Gustar is to like, and encantar is to love. But if you want to see how it is working as a reverse verb, you can use the verb to please to understand why we say me in Spanish. I like this company. This company pleases me. And they say, oh, let's see. Okay, that's the me in Spanish. That's the me in English. This company pleases me. This company is the subject. Esta compañía me gusta. Okay? Or with the verb encantar, when the verb encantar is the verb to love, then you say, I love that movie. I is the subject in English. That movie is the object, but in Spanish, esa película is the subject. And me is the object, as if you see, or you want to say, that movie delights me. So delights is in the third person singular because that movie is third person singular. It's the same in Spanish. Esa película is it, is third person singular, and encanta is matching esa película. So encanta is conjugated according to the subject, that is that movie in Spanish. That movie delights me. Even if in English we say, I love that movie. Okay, that's probably everything about the verb gustar and similar verbs. Is one of the most complicated topics in Spanish. So there are probably 3 topics that are really complicated, but I prefer to say not so easy, because I don't want to say complicated. That is the verb gustar and similar verbs. Then to understand the difference between ser and estar, when you can use ser and when you can use estar, because both means to be. And the other one is the subjunctive, because in English, we don't use the subjunctive a lot. Some centuries ago, people used the subjunctive a lot in English, but not nowadays. But we are not going to talk about the subjunctive today. But just to say that the subjunctive is a mood different from the indicative. All of these sentences that we are using today are in the indicative. Sentences that represent a fact. So if I say, el flautista los encantó, the piper charmed the children, this sentence represents not necessarily something true. In this case, it's just a children's story, not necessarily that represents history. It's just a story. But it is constructed as a statement, this sentence, as a fact. The subjunctive is a mood that represents uncertainty, not necessarily things that are happening. It's more like things that could or not happen, that things that could happen. Okay. Only one example for you to notice the difference between the indicative mood and the subjunctive mood. This is something that we can say in American English because fortunately there are still some it's still possible to use the subjunctive in some cases in American English, in Australian English, and even in British English. The subjunctive has probably completely disappeared. Let's say something in the indicative. For example, when I was a child, comma, I like this cereal. And subjunctive, if I were a child, I would like. And then we're going to see that in Spanish, of course. This cereal. Notice the difference between I was a fat in the past, many years ago when I was a child, or a possibility if I were a child. This is something that you cannot say that in Australia. In Australia, they say, when I was a child, I like this cereal, and they say, if I was a child, mate, I would like that cereal. They said the same was for both, when I was, if I was. But in American English, we still have the possibility to say if I were, as something that represents uncertainty. I am not a child, but if I were a child, is a possibility. It's like if you are trying to convince a child to eat the cereal, and you can use two ways. One, as a fact, when I was a child like you many years ago, I like this cereal. Or you can use something that is more fantasy. Is some you can use the uncertainty. You can use a sentence representing a possibility that is not true. If I were a child, I would like this cereal. Okay. Then let's see these two sentences in Spanish. Cuando yo era un niño, cuando yo era un niño, coma, I have the verb to like, so I need to say me, because it's the verb to like. Me gustaba this cereal, este cereal. Let's suppose that the child prefer scrambled eggs and bacon. And you say, no, eat your cereal. It's a good cereal. When I was a child, I liked this cereal. Or the other option, using the subjunctive. If I were you, if I were a child, I would like this cereal. It is, in Spanish, si. Notice that this if is si without the accent mark. Si with an accent mark means yes. Si without the accent mark means if. Well, if or whether, depending. So in this case, it's if, but si could be if or could be whether. Okay, si yo fuera un niño. Would like. Me gustaría. So this ending, RIA, many times when you see that in a verb, it represents the ending for what in English is would. Would, in this case, gustar, would like. Amaría, would love. Comería, would eat. In this case, me gustaría this cereal. Este cereal. Okay. But this is one of the few cases where we can use the subjunctive in English. But if I say something with the verb to have, then it's not the same. It's the same in Spanish, but not the same in English. For example, we can say using the indicative. When I had that dog, I walked him in the park, for example. I walked that dog in the park, or in the subjunctive. If I had that dog, I would walk him in the park. Okay. Okay, so notice that now when we use the verb to have, it's not possible to have two different conjugations as is possible with the verb to be. That is possible to say when I was, if I were, not with the verb to have. When I had, if I had. But in Spanish, we still have two different conjugations. We can say cuando yo tenía, that is past tense, is the imperfect imperfect indicative. Cuando yo tenía ese perro, well, I can say yo lo caminaba, if you want. Many people don't like to use this, especially in Spain, they can say yo lo caminaba. In Latin America, we prefer to say yo caminaba con él. So in Spain, they say literally, I walk him. In Latin America, we prefer to say, I walk with him en el parque, in the park. Parque, P-A-R-Q-U-E, parque, park. Or the subjunctive, si yo tuviera that dog, ese perro, coma, yo lo caminaría in Spain, but in Latin America we prefer to say yo caminaría con él. I would walk with him en el parque. Okay, So notice that tenía is completely different from tuviera. In English, they represent the same conjugation when I had, if I had, even if the meaning is different, because when I had represents a fact. When I had that dot, this is a fact. Or if I had that dot, this is a possibility, but it's the same conjugation, had, in this case in English, but it's not in Spanish. Cuando yo tenía represents a fact. Si yo tuviera represents a possibility. That's why you can hear children talking in Spanish using the subjunctive all the time. And you say, oh, but the subjunctive is complicated. How these children in kindergarten, they use the subjunctive. Well, it's because, first, it's natural for them because they learn the subjunctive at home without knowing grammar, just because they repeat when they are listening to their parents. And also because the conjugations are different. There's no confusion. Like here, that's why many times people say, oh, the subjunctive is complicated because I don't see the difference when I had, if I had, and that's true. Many verbs in English, they have the same conjugation in the indicative and in the subjunctive. That's why we don't notice the difference. But in Spanish, the conjugations are really different. That's why it's very easy when you learn how to use the subjunctive. It's very easy to notice the difference when somebody is telling you a fact or a supposition, a possibility, something that is uncertain. We can notice the difference with the verb to be in English, or also in Spanish. Era and fuera are really different, but not for many verbs that the difference is. You cannot notice the difference between when I had and if I had, but you can see the difference between tenía and tenía, a fact, and tuviera, a possibility. Okay, any question? No question. Well, this has been a very dense explanation today about the subjunctive, about reverse verbs like encantar, sometimes when it's to love, not when it is to charm. Then also gustar. So there are chapters in books explaining verbs similar to the verb gustar, and also what's the position of the object pronoun in sentences. That sometimes with verb like gustar, the only option is at the end. You cannot place that before the verb. Even if it is only one verb, you cannot place that at the beginning, only at the end. But if you have more than one verb, not reverse verb, but straight verbs, you can place the object pronoun before the conjugated verb or attached to the last verb when it's a statement. When it is a command, the only option is attached to the verb. And when you have only one verb, the only option is before the conjugated verb. So it's not possible to say yo comprélo. No, not when it's only one verb. The only option is before the conjugated verb. You can say before or after if you have at least two verbs. I want to buy this book. Yo quiero comprar este libro. And then you can say yo lo quiero comprar o yo quiero comprarlo. You need at least two verbs for the option of placing the object pronoun before the conjugated verb or attached to the last verb. Another thing related to this is that the last verb is not necessary to have as a last verb a verb in the infinitive. You can have a verb in the gerundio, that is using a verb in the present participle in English. So let's finish this, and then we are going to practice reading for you to practice your pronunciation. You can use a verb that is not, for example, you can say, I have to read it. Okay, then I say, yo tengo que, let's say that that's a book. Yo tengo que leerlo, if it's a book, or something masculine, or yo lo tengo que leer. So because you have two verbs, the verb to have and the verb to read, you can place the subject pronoun after attached to the last verb, that is the verb to read, or before the conjugated verb, that is the verb tener, to have. But also you can say something like, I am reading. I am reading it. And in this case, you also have two verbs, even if it looks like only one, because this is present continuous or present progressive. But in fact, you have two verbs, the verb to be and the verb to read. And then in Spanish, it's also possible to say, yo estoy leyendo, that is the ing form, leyendo lo, leyéndolo. So attached to the ing form that we call gerundio in Spanish, the present participle, or yo lo estoy leyendo. So the same rule, but in this case, the second verb is not a verb in the infinitive. It's not the plain verb. It's a verb that in English is in the present participle, but the present participle is called in Spanish gerundio. Yo estoy leyéndolo attached to the last verb or before the conjugated verb, that is the verb estar. That is one of the forms of the verb to be. Yo estoy leyéndolo o yo lo estoy leyendo. So the gerundio in Spanish is equivalent to the present participle. Okay. And what we call in English gerund is not the gerundio in Spanish. The gerund in Spanish is, well, let's say here, is usually a sustantivo, is a noun. So the gerund in English is a noun. The gerundio in Spanish is not a noun. It's the present participle. It's the one that you use with the verb to be. I am reading. I am eating. It's not necessary in the present tense. It could be in the past tense. It could be I am reading, but also you can say I was reading. Doesn't matter if it is present continuous or past continuous, but you're using the present participle that we call gerundio in Spanish. What an example of gerund in Spanish is, for example, this sentence. The reading, not using as a present participle, but as a noun, and you know that it's a noun because you can place an article before. The reading of this book is a pleasure. The reading of this book is a pleasure. And then, because it's a noun, you cannot have the gerundio in Spanish, that is the one ending, for example, in A-N-D-O or E-N-D-O or E. So it could be E-N-D-O or A-N-D-O. I'm going to show you that in a moment. So you need to use a noun in Spanish. And the noun is la lectura. So using reading as a noun, la lectura de este libro es un placer. The reading of this book is a pleasure. La lectura de este libro es un placer. Or you can use a verb acting as a noun, like leer, but then you cannot say de. You can say leer este libro es un placer. So you have two options in Spanish. One is using really, so a real noun, la lectura. The reading of the book is a pleasure. La lectura de este libro es un placer. Or you can use a verb in the infinitive. Leer este libro es un placer. That is equivalent to say, to read this book is a pleasure. Literally. To read this book is a pleasure. Okay. So the gerund looks like gerundio, but they are different. Gerundio is, in Spanish, is a word equivalent to a word in English ending in ing in a progressive tense. And we're going to see what are the possible endings in Spanish. And that, when the verb is in a present progressive, in a progressive tense, it doesn't matter if it's present progressive or past progressive or future progressive, any progressive tense, that is the present participle. When we use the word gerund, that looks like gerundio, but it's different. Gerundio, gerund, is a noun, as is still ending in ing as reading, but it's a noun. The reading of the book is a pleasure. La lectura de este libro es un placer. Lectura is a noun in Spanish, or you can use a verb in the infinitive, the plain verb. Leer este libro es un placer. To read this book is a pleasure. Okay. So what are the endings that is something connected to the verb ser and estar? So the only option that you have in Spanish is to use the verb estar plus gerundio and never ser plus gerundio. And what are the endings for the gerundio? If the verb is AR, ER, or IR, you know that these are the three endings that we have in Spanish. If the verb is ending in AR, the gerundio is ending in ando. If the verb in the infinitive is ending in ER, the gerundio is ending in yendo. And if the verb in the infinitive is ending in IR, the gerundio is also ending in yendo. Let's see some examples. The verb hablar, the verb to speak. Well, speak or to talk, because in Spanish it's possible to use the verb hablar for both, for to speak or to talk. So hablar, you replace the AR with the A and the O. Hablando, it's speaking or talking. If it's a verb ending in ER, like comer, that's the verb to eat. Then you say comiendo, I-E-N-D-O, that is eating. And the last one is verb ending in IR, like for example, vivir. That's the verb to live. And then you can say viviendo, that is living, the ing, the present participle. And then you can use the verb estar, but never the verb ser. For example, if you want to say, I am eating an apple, you can say in Spanish, yo estoy, you are using the verb estar, yo estoy comiendo an apple, una manzana, and never, you're never gonna say yo soy comiendo una manzana. So the only verb that you can use for the verb to be is the verb estar, never the verb ser. Yo estoy comiendo una manzana. I am eating an apple. Never yo soy comiendo una manzana, because of course you can say that yo soy comiendo is the verb to be, and it can be I am eating an apple, but not in Spanish. You cannot use the verb ser, only the verb estar. Why? Because I am eating an apple represent a state of being. I'm doing this right now. It could be in the past. I was eating an apple, but it represents a state of being. And then the only verb that you can use is estar. No, you cannot use the verb ser. You can use a different verb from the verb to be. Like, for example, you can say something like, yo voy escuchando música. Yeah, it's not only the verb to be, you can use another verb, but not the verb ser. Yo voy escuchando música. It's really I'm going listening to the music. So we still have the verb to be here. I'm going listening to the music, but not in Spanish. Only the verb to go, yo voy, and escuchando, listening to. So it's not only the verb to be that you can use. You can use other verbs. Not many verbs, but some other verbs. A few verbs. But if it is the verb to be, only the verb estar, not the verb ser. And then you have the three possible endings. If it's a verb ending in AR, the ing form is ANDO, hablando, or for the other two, ER and IR, is IENDO, like comiendo, eating, and viviendo, living. There are some cases when we have verbs ending in ER, but these verbs ending in ER are the variation EER, like for example, leer, that in the ing for in Spanish is leyendo. So when a verb is ending EER, another one is, that's the verb to read. Another example could be the verb creer. Creer is the verb to believe. To believe. Then the ing form, the gerundio is creyendo. So instead of having the ending IENDO with verbs ending in EER is YENDO, not IENDO, but YENDO, leyendo or creyendo. Also for verbs ending in AR, if we have a verb ending in EAR, like for example, the verb crear, that is the verb to create. Well, not for that. So crear is just normal. So it's creando. Yeah, it's just ando. That's different. Just not confuse crear and creer. Creer is to believe. Crear is to create. Okay? But then if we have a verb ending in ER, and then it is AER, like for example, traer, that is the verb to bring. Traer, to bring. Then the ing form, the gerundio is trayendo. Again, instead of an I, we use a Y. Trayendo. The ending is YENDO. That is equivalent to say bringing. And creando is creating, but that's not a problem because that's a verb ending in AR, not ER. Creating. Creyendo is believing. And leyendo, it's reading. Okay. So not only traer, if you have another verb ending in AER, it's the same. You replace the I with a Y. For example, the verb caer, that's the verb to fall. And then caer is cayendo, a Y instead of an I, cayendo, that is falling. Okay? And except for that, those verbs ending in AER or EER, EER, leer, creer, AER, traer or caer. The rest of the verbs, they have the regular endings, IENDO. For AR, ando, for ER, yendo, and for IR, also yendo. Okay? Any question? Okay, so now